I call to order the City of Bloomington Board of Zoning Appeals for October the 21st,
Recording in progress.
Can we please have roll call?
Yes. Burrell,
Here.
Coyne,
Here.
Clapper,
Here.
Throckmorton.
Here.
Okay, we have two sets of meeting minutes to approve. The first set is June the 24th, excuse me, 2021. I just want to remind everybody, you do not have to have been present in order to approve these minutes. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve June 24th, 2021 and September 23rd, 2021 minutes.
Okay, we'll do them at the same time. Do I have a second for both?
Sure, a second.
Okay, thank you. Can we please have a vote?
Coyne,
Aye.
Clapper,
Yes.
Throckmorton,
Yes.
and Burrell. Oh, I think Flavia might be froze.
Yeah.
Is she
Oh,
frozen?
there she was. Yep.
Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, reports, resolutions, and communications.
Jackie Scanlon, Development Services Manager. I don't have any reports other than to welcome Eric Coyne, our newest member appointed by the mayor. And we will see later this evening, Jessica Sonborn, who is, we saw last month, who is our new alternate appointed by the mayor. And we'll sit in on a couple of our petitions tonight. So thank you to them and to all of you who are already here for volunteering your time and helping us out. Thanks.
Right, a very warm welcome to Eric. Thank you so much for agreeing to serve and join BZA. I will be recusing myself for the last two cases, so I will be turning the meeting proceedings over to Joe at that time. Okay, so this evening we have no petitions listed to be continued. We will, however, be hearing three petitions tonight. V-16-21, Michael Cordaro, this is the Johnson Creamery. CU-18-21, Sean Urton. And V-19-21, Wayne and Danielle Poole. Can we please have the staff report for V-16-21, Michael Cordaro, Johnson Creamery? Thanks.
Thank you. This is a request from Michael Cordora for a property at 335 West 8th Street. The petitioners are requesting a variance from the front building setback standards that require a minimum of 70% of a building to be at the build-to line. So this property is within our downtown, within the downtown core overlay district. It currently is a surface parking lot. To the south of this is the Johnson Creamery office building. Just immediately to the northeast is the Showers building in City Hall. To the east along this property runs the Beeline Trail. And then to the west, you have a mix of office, some manufacturing uses, and a church. So as I mentioned, the petitioners are requesting a variance from the front building setback standards in order to allow for the property to be redeveloped with a new building. The petitioners came forward for site plan approval from the Planning Commission last year. And as part of that petition, they were planning to relocate a portion of a stormwater culvert that runs underneath this property. So you can see on this slide here, there is a large underground culvert. It's a 48-inch pipe that has a 15-foot easement on top of that runs diagonal through the northeast corner of the property. So the petitioners were proposing to relocate this culvert. However, as they got further into the planning of that, they realized there were substantial difficulties with that they were not able to overcome. These required some severe off-site improvements, specifically removing all of 8th Street to allow for the culvert to be placed in that street. As well as there were concerns that were raised about the historic smokestack that is immediately adjacent to the culvert as well on the southeast portion of the site. So as a result of that, they had to redesign the plan to not encroach within the culvert or the easement that runs through there. So this slide kind of shows the location of the easement relative to the previous site plan. As I mentioned, they were not able to overcome the difficulties with the site in moving this. And so they've had to redesign it to not locate any of the building within that easement. So this is the site plan that is being proposed now. So this was heard at the Plan Commission on Monday of this week and was approved contingent upon the granting of this variance. So the Plan Commission found that it did meet all of the site plan requirements, all of the architectural requirements, and obviously this is all pending the approval of the variance to allow for the building to not be at the build-to line. So real quickly, the build-to line within the downtown requires that a minimum of 70% of a building be at or within 0 to 5 feet of the property. The intent of that was as you go along streets within the downtown, you have a kind of uniform block face as you move down that street. So that was the intent for the build-to line. This particular section of 8th Street, as you may or may not be familiar with, is very unique as well. It's kind of a segmented section of street. It runs through the Showers parking lot. It really kind of functions as almost really more of a side yard for a lot of these properties. You've got the Beeline Trail that runs along the east side. The other buildings that are to the west of this all front on Rogers Street to the west. So 8th Street is very unique as well. So there are kind of a combination of unique criteria and factors surrounding this property that have brought them forward together with this site plan and this request. So the zoning code requires that, like I said, a minimum 70% of the building be at that build-to line. They are only able to accomplish a 2%, basically given where the culvert and the easement are. The culvert and the easement run pretty much right along the front and prevent any of the building from being located along the street or even alongside the Beeline Trail. So the petitioners have done a good job of working around the constraints that are on the site. They've designed a building and a site that gets as close to the easement as possible. They've proposed a large plaza and seating area on the northeast portion of the site that interacts with the Beeline Trail to kind of help folks interact with that and provide a pedestrian experience along the switch yard that we desired, as well as provide the space along 8th Street that is also the building design that we want to see. They've got ground floor amenity space. They've got large glass along the 8th Street frontage. So the look and the overall design of the building is still something that accomplishes all of the requirements of the UDO. And it's just the one aspect in relation to the build-to line that they're requesting a variance from due to some of the unique conditions that are on the property. So as I mentioned, the Plan Commission did review all of the architecture renderings and the remainder of the site plans. And so everything else meets our zoning code requirements. So the petitioners are just requesting the variance from that one standard. So in our staff report, we did outline the review criteria that are applicable for development standards variance. Real quickly, I'll just kind of step through those. The first one is that the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. So in the staff report, we made findings that the location of this slightly further back would not have any impact on the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare. Again, with the use and value adjacent to the area would not be substantially impacted. As I mentioned, 8th Street is very unique as well as that it is not really a full street segment along here, and that the buildings along here are already kind of encumbered with the Beeline Trail, as well as a lot of other unique factors along 8th Street. So the last one, that's a strict application of the terms of the UDO, will present practical difficulties in use of the property, and that the practical difficulties are peculiar to the property in question, completely revolve around the location of a large underground culvert that really doesn't serve this property, but serves the general city as a whole for all of the drainage above this. So this has several inlets along there that direct stormwater throughout the city underground underneath this property, and the size and location of this culvert do not allow for the property to be used in the manner for which a zoning code would require. The easement and the culvert do not allow for anything to be placed over it. And the relocation of it was not something that was able to be achieved. And the granting of these variants would relieve the practical difficulties here by allowing the property to be redeveloped in a manner that meets all of our site plan requirements and accomplishes the goals of the community. So with that, we are recommending that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the proposed findings that are outlined in our report, and we are recommending approval of this with the 3 conditions that are listed in staff's report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. The petitioner's representative?
Who's
Who is
that, Eric?
Joseph Patrick would be the petitioner representative on this.
Okay, Mr. Patrick?
Yes, thank you.
Hello, good evening.
Good
Could you
evening.
please, yes, could you please state your name?
Joseph Patrick, and I'm the Director of Development at Peerless Development. So I'll be sitting in on Michael Cordero's behalf tonight. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to make it tonight.
Thank you. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You have up to 20 minutes to present your petition.
Great. Okay. To be honest with you, I think Eric did a very thorough job, and thank you, Eric. I did want to thank the committee for having the opportunity to come back before you again. I hope that the explanation that Eric has presented to you is fairly clear, and the reality of why we're requesting this variance all unfortunately hinges upon the existence of this, again, this stormwater box culvert, which is, unfortunately, it's very challenging. And I could go into a lot of details of the research that we did of trying to find what it would take to relocate that and all of the implications of that, if anybody would really like to do that. But the reality was it became so cumbersome and impacted so many other utilities in the area along 8th Street and on the B line that it just became really, like I said, unruly and did not seem to be worth the efforts for that. So we shifted gears and created what we feel is still a very vibrant and productive, I think, creative design with the existing site and with the restrictions that we have. So I think if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for anybody. But other than that, I don't know that there's a lot to add to it.
Okay, well, thank you. So
Thank you.
we are to the board for questions of staff and petitioner. Does anyone have a question? Anybody? Eric, I'll ask, this is more out of curiosity. The parking lot that's currently there, does that serve the Johnson Creamery building, and what happens to the parking needs of that office building?
Yes, so that parking lot does serve the existing office building. Within the downtown, there is not a parking minimum for commercial parking. It's only residential uses that have a parking minimum. So there will be some spaces on the site, approximately 8 spaces that will be remaining. And that will be for the petitioner to kind of come up with a plan for how those will be used for the various tenants within the building. I think they've made some arrangements for off-site parking arrangements in the nearby church. And then also, obviously, we just have a recently constructed city garage in the Trades District that has parking in that available for users of the area as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to supplement Eric's comment,
Yes,
we already do have an agreement with the adjacent church that allows for us to utilize a number of their parking spaces during the workday hours, during the work week. So our tenants are aware of that, and we've relayed this information to all of our current tenants in the commercial tenants in the office building, as well as plan to obviously for any future tenants. And we've already been in conversation as well with the Trades District parking garage about leasing spaces for our commercial tenants as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? If there are none, then we will go to the public. Is there anyone here this evening from the public who would like to speak to this petition? If so, please raise your hand in the participants list. so that we know you want to speak? I do not see anyone. Jackie, do you see anybody?
I do not, and I haven't received any messages.
Okay. So then we go back to the petitioner. Do you have anything further you'd like to add at this point, Mr. Patrick?
No, I don't think so. I think hopefully everything that we've presented that Eric has set forth kind of speaks for itself. So thank you.
Great. Then we are back to the board for action.
I'll move approval of V-16-21 with the following conditions of: 1, approved per terms and conditions of Plan Commission case number SP-27-21. 2, elevations and renderings for the building permit must be consistent with submitted documents. 3, the variances for the proposed site plan and elevations as submitted only. Any future site plans must meet all UDO requirements.
And do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you. Any discussion, or we are ready for a vote? Jackie, can we have Will? Can we have a vote, please?
Yes, this is a motion to approve with conditions. Clapper,
Yes.
Throckmorton,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
and Coin.
Yes.
Great, 4-0.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Okay, we are now on to the next case, and let the minutes reflect that I am handing the proceedings over to Mr. Throckmorton. Thank you.
Thank you. And also that Ms. Sonborn will join us.
And Ms.
for
Sonborn
the
will be
next
joining
petitions.
us. Thank you. Yes,
you.
of course. Thank you, Jessica. And I will be departing.
Give me 1 second to pull up my notes here. And Jackie, tell me again. Oh, I see. Jessica's joined us. Thank you. All right. This is for case number CU-18-21. May I please have a staff report?
Thank you, Eric Grulick, Senior Zoning Planner. So this is a request for Sean Burton for a property at 412 East 4th Street. The property is within our mixed-use downtown zoning district within the University Village overlay. The petitioners are here tonight to request conditional use approval to allow the use of student housing or dormitory within the University Village downtown character overlay district to allow for the construction of a new building with 2 4-bedroom apartments. So the property has been developed with a mixed-use building on the north side of the site. It's got some commercial space as well as residential units. There's a parking lot that is in the back of this. So the petitioners are proposing to redevelop the parking area that is in the rear of the structure with a new structure. This would be a 3-story structure with parking on the ground floor for 8 parking spaces. And then the upper 2 floors each floor would have a 4-bedroom apartment in those. So the UDO classifies any use that has more than 30% of the bedrooms as 3 bedrooms or any 4 or 5 bedrooms as student housing. Within the downtown, student housing is listed as a conditional use. So therefore, the petitioners are requesting the conditional use approval tonight to allow for this new building to be constructed in the rear. So the petitioner has submitted renderings for the proposed buildings, which you can see on the screen now. And one of the things that I wanted to point out while we do have these renderings up is that there is some grade change that happens on the site. And our UDO allows for us to look at an average finished grade across the site, whereby we take the lowest portion and then kind of the highest portion and take a midpoint of that to measure the height from. So with that, the petitioners have shown the building, but it's still a few inches over. It's about 30 feet and a few inches over that. So they are working to slightly modify the size of the building to get it to meet that. But that's certainly something that they feel confident that they can accomplish. So the request tonight is just in essence for this use. So we will review the actual site plan with a minor site plan approval. And at that time, we'll make sure that it does meet the height limit. But the effect of the approval tonight is simply to approve the use of of this building for student housing for the 2 units that are being proposed. So there are several sections of the code that deal with the criteria, the review criteria for this. We have the overall criteria for conditional uses that reflect the general compliance criteria. I mentioned one of the specific standards that apply to this in regard to the height. The other is a maximum floor plate that is allowed for this use, which is a 5,000 square foot floor plate. This building is 2,000 square feet, so it falls within that 5,000 square feet that is allowed. As I mentioned, the building is about 10 inches over the 30 feet that is allowed, but they will be modifying that in order to come into compliance with that section of our code. So the overall site and building would meet our site plan requirements. This would be considered a limited compliance situation. So they would be planting new landscaping and bicycle parking around the site in order to bring it into compliance with the limited compliance section of our code. So there are additional criteria that are applicable to conditional uses. First of those is consistency with the comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan certainly encourages infill development within the downtown and within the community. So this is a great example of that, of constructing a new building over an existing parking area. They would still be providing parking on the site to meet the requirements for the residential uses. The second criteria is in regards to adequate public services and facilities. So this area is well served from 4th Street. No issues have been identified with providing any sanitary service or water service to the site. This area is easily within walking distance of campus just to the east of this. And as well, the bus line runs along Dunn Street, which is just about a half block to the east of this as well. So it's certainly well serviced by public services and facilities. And then the last criteria is in regards to minimizing or mitigating any adverse impacts. We have not identified any adverse impacts from this use. These are only for 2 units on the site. Parking is being provided underneath there. This is surrounded by mixed use as well as residential uses. There are other multifamily uses just to the south of this and other mixed use buildings around here as well. So we did not find that the incorporation or the construction of the 2 units on this site would have any impact on adjacent properties. I will certainly point out that in your packet, there was a letter of remonstrance from an adjacent property owner. So I wanted to point out that that was hopefully something that was included in your packet. But we did not find, as I mentioned, that the construction of these 2 units would have any kind of a negative impact on adjacent properties. So with that, we are recommending that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt proposed findings and recommend approval of this request with the 3 conditions that are listed on the staff report. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. I see that the petitioner is Sean Urton, and is Sean with us?
Maybe Doug Bruce was present, and he would probably be representing the petitioner as well.
I see Doug Bruce. Doug, are you representing the petitioner?
See if I can unmute.
I'm here. This is Doug.
Please state your name.
Doug Bruce.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And you or any of those that are representing the petitioner and the petitioner themselves have up to 20 minutes at this period or in response to present your petition.
Okay, great. Thank you. I know Sean Urton and Carrie Costello are both here, and certainly we can answer any questions you might have. First, I want to thank staff for working with us on this project and presenting our proposal. A few things I would just like to add is that we received approval from the Historic Commission, unanimous approval last week for this project. We have a few things we know we're working on as far as the exterior and a couple of details again, as Eric pointed out, with height, we've got kind of a unique site with grade dropping substantially across the site. But that's not something we see as an issue. We have a building, there is a building just directly to the east of this building that is housing townhomes on a back lot that was done a few years ago. This is perfect form of infill housing. It's also the best place really to place students, as we're just a block from campus. And while we will provide parking on this site, we will anticipate that our students will be walking to class. We really don't have much more. We part of this project, the owners, Carrie and Sean, renovated and restored the home along 4th Street and have spent quite a bit of money and time really bringing that house back to the character that we like to see on Restaurant Row. And this is part of that type of project that helps make that work. That's not an inexpensive venture by any means. So this is just a small scale way, as Eric pointed out, to take an existing complete, basically pervious parking lot and put a small scale structure on it. With that, I don't really have much more to add, but we're all here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Doug. Does either petitioner, would either petitioner like to add anything additional or like to speak at this moment?
This is Sean, and no, I don't have anything to currently add. I think Doug did a wonderful job of summing it.
Thank you. All right. Seeing that, we'll return to the board to have any questions of the board, of our staff, or of the petitioners. Anyone on the board like to speak to that?
This is Eric Coyne. I do. Just real quick, maybe Eric, you'd be in a position to answer this. The email from Dave Harsad that you alluded to in the packet about other 4-bedroom units becoming, to quote him, becoming party houses. What are there other 4-bedroom units located near there, and do we see problems? Just kind of curious.
No, we did not identify any other 4-bedroom units or 5-bedroom units within 300 feet of this area. Certainly that 4-bedroom and the 5-bedroom characterization that those oftentimes become party houses is something that we've heard a lot. I think you probably see more impacts from that when there are multiple units within a development that have 4- and 5-bedroom units, especially, when they're all along one hallway or something like that. In this particular situation, each of these units is separated by a completely different floor. So, you don't have that entire floor of a building that's devoted to this. And like I said, these are only 2 units on this property that are going to have those bedrooms in there. So no, the low unit count on this property, we think really is one of the main limiting factors here.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Any questions for the petitioner or staff? Seeing none at this point, do we have anyone in the public wishing to comment on this petition? And if so, would you please raise your hand in the participants? Do we see anyone?
I
Okay.
don't see anyone, haven't gotten any messages.
Okay, well, with that, at this point, I believe you have probably what 18 or 19 minutes left. So if any one of the petitioner, or Doug, if he would like to respond, he has time. If Sean or Carrie would like to speak, I just need to swear you in and you can also speak to it. Doug, do you have anything you'd like to add at this point? You have up to, I think, 18 minutes.
I really don't. I guess I would add one thing, and I know Sean and I discussed this today. They have a couple of units in the existing building in the front, and as Eric pointed out, we all have this fear that 4-bedroom units or 3-bedroom units are party houses, but I think a lot of those are mired in the houses that we would see where you have a big porch and a street frontage, and this is just not that kind of unit. We don't have any balconies. We don't have a big porch that people are going to congregate on. It's behind a unit, and furthermore, I don't think they've ever had any complaints with the units that they've had in the building that they currently own right now. So I just guess I would like to add that and say that if there certainly were problems, I think these clients would take care of them rather quickly to make sure that there isn't something that's going to affect nearby neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. At this point, if that concludes your comments, we'll go back to the board for action.
I would like to recommend to the BZA to adopt the findings and recommend for approval of CU-18-21 with the following conditions. This condition use is limited to the proposed use and site plan as submitted. No other use is approved. Number 2, the building height must be reduced to no more than 30 feet tall as required by the UDO. Number 3, a certificate of appropriateness is required prior to issuance of the building permit.
We have a motion in front of the board. Do I have a second?
I second.
Any further discussion before a vote is taken? If not, could we please call the roll? And a vote of yes would be to approve the conditional use petition.
Sonborn,
Yes.
Throckmorton,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Coin,
Yes.
4-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate your time tonight. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just one real quick thing, Eric, on that. I saw when you put up a notice that said view from the beeline on a schematic that you showed. So I'm not sure if it was the wrong slide or what, but it wasn't worth bringing up in the presentation, but I thought I would point out that I don't think that was correct.
No, thank you. That was probably just an accidental.
Okay. It might be something
from a previous.
Yeah, it might be
slide.
something you want to correct before it goes into the record or whatever. So,
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
small thing. All right. With that, we are now on to case V-19-21, Wayne and Danielle Poole. Who's representing? What staff members presenting this tonight?
That would be me again.
Okay, Eric, if you would please give us a staff report.
Thank you. Eric Rulick, Senior Zoning Planner. So this is a request from Wayne and Danielle Poole for the property that they own at 916 South Morton Street. The property is zoned mixed use medium scale, MM, as the rest of the adjacent properties to the north and south of this are along the west side of Morton. To the west of this, you have the McDowell Historic District, and this site is within the McDowell Historic District as well. Adjacent uses along here to the north and is a single family residence. To the south is Cardinal Spirits. To the west, you have the McDowell single family neighborhood. And then to the east of this, you have a mix of uses within a planned unit development. So the petitioners are here tonight to request a variance from the rear yard building setback standards to allow for an addition to the existing residence. You can see here the aerial photograph. The site has alleys on 3 sides, to the north, the west, and the south. So this area of Morton Street was part of the amendments to the UDO where we adjusted some of the zoning along the street to promote more uses that are compatible with the Beeline Trail. So I think it was previously zoned industrial. So this was rezoned to the mixed use medium scale in order to promote those uses. The petitioners, however, do own the property and use it as a single family residence. And they would like to add on to the west side of the property or west side of the building in order to construct a new garage. So in the mixed use medium scale district, the rear yard building setback is 7 feet. So the petitioners are requesting a variance to allow for the garage addition to be 5 feet to the west property line rather than the 7 feet that is required. So the garage would be attached via a breezeway that is shown between the building and the garage in order to attach that. So the petitioners are proposing a 2-car garage that would open to the north alongside the alley and would feature a new driveway along there. So the house is currently about 35 feet from the west property line. And as I mentioned, they are requesting the variance to allow for the garage to be 5 feet rather than 7 feet that is required. The remainder of the site plan, the elevations, the height, and other setbacks all meet the zoning code requirements. So they are only requesting a variance from that rear yard setback criteria. So with this development standard variance, there are, of course, 3 review criteria that are required to be evaluated. The first of those is that the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the community. We did not find that there would be any adverse impact to the public health, safety, and morals, or general welfare as a result of the variance. The second criteria is that the use and value of the area adjacent to the property would not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Again, we did not find that there would be any negative impacts. I do want to point out at this point that we did receive several emails and letters this week from adjacent property owners in support of this petition. However, those came in after the packet had already been distributed. So we were not and are not able to pass those along to the BZA, but I did want to make the BZA aware that we did receive several letters from adjacent property owners in support of this petition. The last criteria, which is always a very difficult one, is that the strict application of the terms of the Unified Development Ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property, and that the practical difficulties are peculiar to the property in question. So that is always very difficult. However, in this regard here, we do not find that there is anything unique about the property that does not allow it to meet code. In this case here, the rear yard setback requirement is only 7 feet. If this was zoned residential, that setback would be even more. It would be a 25-foot setback. However, in this district, it already has this reduced setback of only 7 feet. As I mentioned, there's 35 feet from the house to the property line, which gives them adequate area to meet the 5-foot setback and still do the design of the garage that they want. They could simply reduce the size of the breezeway that is shown between the garage and the house, and that would allow it to meet the setback requirements. So we did not find that there was anything unique about the property that did not allow it to meet our requirements. So based on that, we are recommending that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the proposed findings, and we recommend denial of this variance request. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Eric. And I see that I have a note of Wayne and Dee Dee, so I'm going to assume that's Wayne and Dee Dee Poole. So we would go to the petitioner to speak. Would you just let me know with a simple yes or no, Wayne and Dee Dee, which of you would like to speak? Wayne, would you like to speak to the petition?
Yes, this is Wayne Poole.
Yes, hold on. And Dee Dee or Danielle, would you also like to speak?
Yes, if necessary.
Okay, I'll go ahead. I'm asking, I want to go ahead and swear you both in now. Wayne, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And Danielle, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you have 20 minutes, and that will include the initial presentation time and then also response time. So I do want to explain, that means if anyone says something that's directed to the staff that you would like to take issue with or address, you'll need to wait until we come back to you for you to do that. So just write down notes and then do it in your time for reply, please. With that, you have 20 minutes, and that would be for both of you, and I'll turn it over to whomever would like to speak first.
All right. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thanks, Eric, for giving the initial presentation. Everything was accurate. And thank you, BZA, for the opportunity to present our case and trying to get the setback. And lastly, we would like to thank Barry. She's been great to work with. She's really helping us out with the design and interiors and those sort of things. I know she can't be on the call, but we do want to mention thank you to her. Well, first off, my wife and I moved in Bloomington 6 months ago, and we're very excited. We love the property. all three of our children moved to Bloomington, and even Dee Dee's parents moved to Bloomington. So we can actually call ourselves Bloomingtonians now. So we are excited citizens here. And Eric, would you mind displaying the actual plan view of the drawing? Or the site, I guess it'd be the site plan view. Yes, perfect. Well, just want to mention the home is a 106-year-old property, and the property is comprised of two parcels. One is developed with a home, and the other is vacant. And the original drawing that Eric showed kind of showed the line in going through the house, but it's actually kind of on the edge of the house, and we do plan on hoping to, yeah. So that's the actual survey, and it kind of shows you where the line is. So our goal is to leave that lot vacant for future use. It's unknown to us at this point, but we do own that lot in between Cardinal Spirits and the home. And there are unconstructed alleyways on each side. So that would include the north, the south, and the west. And of course, we are directly on the B line, so our home is very visible to the public. And that is kind of what makes this property pretty unique, is it is a very public location. We have pretty minimal privacy on the front half of our home. And the house is part of the McDowell Gardens historic neighborhood. And as part of being that neighborhood, it is recommended that any additions be to the back third or back 2/3 of the home, away from the view from the front of the street. So that's one of the primary reasons we have to have the garage put in the back of the property. And there has, like Eric mentioned, there has been a recent zone change that went to mixed medium. And as part of that mixed medium, it requires any accessory building that is greater than 15%, or an accessory building must be 15% of the home. So the garage is obviously bigger than that. So that requires you to attach the garage to the home. So we are going to be putting a breezeway in between there to connect those two together. And we do have future plans to add the master bedroom suite to the north part of the home, existing home as well. And we're requesting a 2-car garage. It would be 1.5 story to the rear of the property. The proposed garage would match the home width. And the reason, again, the garage has to be the rear of the property is because of historic preservation guidelines. They prefer add-ons to be on the rear of the property. And our ultimate goal is to try to create a private space. Because again, we mentioned we're on the front of the B line. We really need that space to just to have some privacy back there from the foot traffic and just feel.
We have a lot.
And so that's the reason we're requesting a 5-foot setback versus a 7-foot. And what makes this different than this different homes, and being this is a 106-year-old property, when they developed a lot of the area, if you look, the majority of the homes are 15 to 20 foot setback from the front of property line. Our property is unique that it sets back 50 feet, which that limits how much we can actually add on to the back. And so the practical difficulty is a private area. We have really no other area to create a kind of that safe space, and has to be in the back of the property. And we did mention the unconstructed alleyway. There is an unconstructed alleyway to the west, so it's not butting up directly up against the neighbors. And then, Dee Dee, do you have any comments before we kind of go into? Okay, but we did wish you would have had more opportunity to review some of the supporting letters from our neighbors. They've been very supportive. The McDowell Gardens, very supportive in the historic preservation, unanimously support the certificate of appropriateness. And they even mentioned that they approved the setback or support the setback. And I do want to call, I'm not sure if Jack Baker is on the line, but he wrote a really nice letter. And I just want to read a paragraph from what he wrote. But it says, the 1916 house is peculiarly situated on slot, far from the Morton Street property line and close to the rear property line of the alley. This was apparently done at the time to place it as far as possible away from the railroad noise and smoke. In this peculiar departure from the traditional development pattern of the surrounding neighborhood, the improvements requested by the pools are constrained to a small working space and present practical difficulties. While the garage is appropriate in size, scale, and style with the original house, the connecting breezeway is, judged by modern home standards, inadequate in size for comfortable passage and sitting. Moving the garage closer to the west property line will add space and resolve this practical difficulty, as well as improve the alignment of the garage and the alley. So I thought those were really good words that Jack explained it really well. And but we really appreciate everyone's time and consideration for this variance. So that's the end of our presentation.
So we'll withhold the remainder of the time for responses. At this point, we'll come back to the board for any questions. Anyone on the board have questions for the staff or the petitioner at this time?
I have a question.
Yes.
So have the pools received the COA from the Historic Preservation Commission, or do they still have to apply for it?
We've received it.
With the current plans that we have received, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's
I'm
correct.
surprised Eric didn't have that in time because it was completed last Thursday, the 14th.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? I have, while we're waiting, I have one question for the staff, which is, could you put the site plan up again with the new garage and the proposed breezeway? It was the same graphic.
Yeah. Yeah, give me just a second. I'm sorry.
Sure.
For some reason, my computer is not fine. Oh, there. Okay.
So my question to the staff is, I understand about the setback. That was the graphic too there. I understand about the graphic. So can you talk to me at all about fencing for this particular site? What's allowed and what's not allowed in order to establish additional privacy against the Morton Street approach?
Yep. So in this regard here, they would be allowed to have an 8-foot tall fence, and I'll try to draw on the screen here. They can have an 8-foot tall fence that is even with the front of the house. So, you know, it could look like that. So basically what I'm drawing here could be an 8-foot tall fence. And then forward of that between the house and Morton would be restricted to 4 feet in height.
So if I understand the staff correctly, it would be possible to establish privacy on the property that's not directly behind the house. Is that correct? Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, they could fence off, you know, what I've shown, the entire backyard with an 8-foot tall fence.
Okay. And then for either of the petitioners, Wayne or Dee Dee, so we look at petitions like this for variances with the term peculiar difficulty. Is there something about this that's preventing you from doing what you want to do? So I think you addressed it a little bit, but could you maybe be more direct in explaining to us why the garage must be 2 feet over the setback?
Well, I know with the, and I know the ashes will be on there with the historic guidelines for our neighborhood and for the Historic Preservation Committee, we cannot build a garage fence like that. It has to be on the back third of the property. It has to be vertical. It can be up to 8 feet, but they would not approve a fence at the front of the house.
Okay, so back to staff then, is that accurate, Eric? They're not able to, or is it strictly advisory from the Historic Commission?
I cannot comment on what the Conservation District guidelines are or are not. However, I would say that those are two separate sets of regulations. You know, the Conservation District obviously does not override zoning, and zoning doesn't override Conservation District guidelines. Both of those have to work in conjunction with each other.
And wait, can I, oh, I'm sorry. Eric,
Yes, this is, the question is for staff, please.
Yeah, I think your question was, so correct me if I'm wrong, that was answered by the petitioner. I don't think she answered your question. So why can't they meet the 7 feet in the back, or were you still asking about the fence?
I was asking specifically, why can you not meet? I was asking the petitioner specifically, why can you not build the garage within?
Yeah, okay, because she answered about the fence, so I think she maybe misunderstood. It is
did, but
very
I think-
unlikely that the McDowell Garden guidelines don't allow for that garage to meet 7 foot setback. So I think she answered you in relationship to an 8 foot fence. Just
I'm sorry, say that again, Jackie.
yeah, she can correct me if
dual-
I'm wrong, but she seemed to answer your question related to an 8 foot fence. She didn't answer the question about a 7 foot rear building setback, which I think was your actual question.
Yes, but you just made mention to the McDowell.
I said it's very unlikely that the McDowell Garden Historic District guidelines don't allow a 7 foot setback on the back. But what she said was that they would not probably easily allow an 8 foot fence. We can't speak to that because we don't know what they say, but that would be more likely.
Okay, well, and I appreciate Dee Dee, your answer. Eric, again on that drawing. So I'm being told by the petitioner, if I understand, that it can only be the back third. So I'm trying to get an understanding of what's useful here in terms of fencing to create private property to stay within the UDO and to gain what they're wanting. So my question to you is, based on the answer from the petitioner, where does staff believe that a setback on the fence would be to use a third of that property and be within the historic guidelines?
Well, so if I were to draw on here and just ballpark what I think a third looks like, it would probably be something like that.
All right, so let me then go to the petitioner. Dee Dee, does that look accurate to you? Roughly, I'm not asking you to stick right to it in terms of where it cuts to the house, but is that close?
It would have to have gates. That's our parking area. If you see existing gravel area.
Okay, so to the petitioner again, either one of you. So that deck and private yard that's there, that's being proposed between the house, the breezeway area.
Mhm.
So if there were a fence there, would you not be able to build to the north and to the south to the property line behind that fence to allow for privacy?
Well, I know we want to develop the lot south.
Yeah.
That we don't want to go over that property line. That's why we're staying right there, and the garage is directly behind the house. The north side, you can address that.
Yeah, so the north side is where our parking is. So there's a driveway, and that's the only way we can access to be able to park and get into the driveway. And you can see it as we pull into the driveway. And
We have no parking in the front.
Yeah, I understand. So I'm looking at the existing gravel area in the apron. And I guess my question is that there's space to the north between the side of the house and the 7 foot side yard setback that you could conceivably build out to maintain the privacy and personal area that you're desiring. I'm trying to get an understanding of the peculiar circumstance that's preventing you from using the property in order to get what you want and also stay within the UDO. So I'm asking about that area that appears to be an area that can be used with fencing that would be within the historic guidelines and allow you to use your property to give you the privacy that you're wanting and stay within the UDO. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, I mean, the red line that Eric did draw, I mean, we couldn't put a fence. I suppose, I mean, we plan on putting a future addition in that area over there, and that's not exact. That's kind of penciled in where the addition potentially could be. And then with the driveway, it would still be pretty tight to have that in there, but we were planning on putting a future addition on that side of the house. And so we'd like to have it in between the house and garage, as that would be just kind of a nice private space.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand what you're saying, which is it would be nice for that to happen, but there's no peculiar circumstance that's preventing you from using that space that I've asked about.
Well, the peculiar thing is we are planning on putting our future addition there.
I'm not asking, I'm sorry, I'm not being clear. I'm not asking you to put it where the future addition is. I'm asking you to go north from where the breezeway parkway is between the garage and the current house. That space would fall within a fenced in area. I'm just trying to understand if you could use that or not. To the left of that red line.
Yeah,
Right.
we see your point there.
Is that possible?
It is possible. It's not.
And since you will be possibly building in the future, you know, the fence could be removed and then the future addition would provide additional privacy. What I'm trying to ask is there, given this property, are there peculiar circumstances that prevent you from gaining what you're wanting, which is some privacy and development of a personal area back there? Or is there something preventing you from doing that?
Just the space is small.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, thank you. That's you're very kind to answer my questions. Thank you. Anyone else from the board before we go to the public?
I have a question. So the area, the breezeway per se, we are only looking at the roof and a deck and a private yard. That's all the information I have. So it looks to be like 12 feet or 10 feet from the existing house, the roof line. So does that incorporate a mudroom or some other thing?
It's an existing mudroom that we will not most likely be able to change due to the historic guidelines.
Okay. Thank you for showing.
And we're
Thank you.
planning on keeping it for that reason.
Are there any other questions from the board?
No, that's all.
All right, we'll have further opportunity after we hear from the public, but if there are no, Eric, do you have questions, or Jessica? Okay, so with that, we will go to the public. I see, I believe Paul Ash had his hand up. Is Paul still here? Okay, Paul, I believe you would like to speak, so if we can unmute Paul. He's from the public, yes, Jackie? Okay, so Paul, I'll ask this and we'll unmute you and I'll say, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And state your name, please.
I'm Elizabeth Cox Ash. My husband is Paul Ash. Paul, you want to say? Forget it.
Okay, Elizabeth, please, you have up to 5 minutes. We'd like to hear what you have to say.
Okay. Wayne and Dee Dee came to our neighborhood association on October 7th, and there were 14 members present. And they presented everything, including the variance request. And we approved of what they're wanting to do, the addition, the garage, as well as the breezeway and the fencing that they're going to fence a little small area. It was presented to the Historic Commission on the 14th, and they unanimously approved it. This would have minimal effect on neighboring residents since they own the lot next door. I understand they had gotten approval from one of the neighbors on the north side of their property who approved it. At the meeting, there was a member who lives on Morton Street, just about half a block away, Jean Lave, and she definitely approved it. And at the Historic Commission, Sam DeSolar owns the lot next to Jean Lave's lot on Morton, and he definitely approved it. So I don't see such an issue with this. It looks like all the neighbors approve it. It looks like staff is the only one who doesn't approve it because it doesn't fit the letter of the UDO. If the previous two petitions that went in front of you, you allowed variances to be allowed, one of which was really kind of surprised me because it could affect stormwater of a whole lot of areas, which we've had flooding of. And that was definitely approved. I don't see why staff can't go ahead and allow this variance, you know, for this 2-foot area. They have done everything right, going to each and every way of getting approval. They have an architect who's president of the zoning, and she has been guiding them through all of this. I just plead with you that you will somehow come to your senses and go ahead and approve this. In my layman way, I'm looking at corporate things such as the first petition brought up by a developer, and that was approved. Yet when these little people come to ask for an approval, they're turned down. And I certainly hope there's no prejudice as far as staff goes on that. I just kind of wanted to let you know the neighbors definitely approve this. Thank you.
And thank you for that. Anyone else from the public wishing to make comments? And I see Tina Lubarski. Let's unmute her. And Tina, when we get you unmuted, I'll have you state your name and then I'll swear you in.
Okay, I'm here.
Okay, say your name, please.
Tina Lubarski.
And do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And you have 5 minutes. We'd like to hear what you have to say.
Fantastic. Well, some of the particular difficulties with this property are just the location of the house relative to the property lines. And what the pools are really wanting to do is to have some privacy and security. And we all deserve that. We all deserve to feel safe in our space. And that's what they're wanting. And in order to have an enclosed garage and a usable space for the breezeway, they've worked with their architect and have come up with that design. I am definitely in a favor of approving the variance for them to have the 5-foot instead of 7-foot variance. I live directly across the street from them. I live on the Beeline Trail, and they've already made amazing improvements to the property, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of the other improvements that they make on their property. And I want to just make sure that I say it very clearly. I am definitely in favor of the variance for them, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. And I see I got muted, sorry. I see Shauna's iPhone. Can I have that person state their first and last name, please?
Shauna Burton.
Hello, and do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, you have up to 5 minutes, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say, please.
Okay, I live catty corner from Wayne and Dee Dee, and I hope that they're approved because they want it and everything that they've done looks really nice. And I'm someone who uses that alleyway that they'll be near every day and it won't affect me at all. So I hope you approve it.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have anyone else from the public who would like to make comments to this petition? Okay. Staff, do you see anyone? I don't see anyone on mine. Okay. Then at this point, we will go back to any final comments to our petitioners, Wayne and Dee Dee. Wayne and Dee Dee, you do have time left, and you may address that time with anything else you'd like to say. Wait, we'll unmute you. Give us one moment. And Jackie, how much time do they have left, please? Or Eric?
Hey, Joe, while we're waiting, if Wayne and Dee Dee, when you respond, I'd be curious to know. If,
we have to wait, Eric. We have to wait on comments. You can ask questions after they respond. Sorry. Yeah, it'll come up at the next. It'll be the next section, Eric. So
I'm a rookie, so yeah,
that's okay. That's okay. Wayne and Dee Dee, how much time do they have?
They have just under 13 minutes left.
Yeah, just under 13. But please, if you'd like to address anything at this point, it's back to the petitioner. You can use up to 13 minutes.
I know that we have worked diligently with the historic and our neighborhood association, and I doubt very seriously, because we've spent months with them, that the fence that in the area that Eric circled would ever get approved. So the zoning or the variance may not happen, but regardless, if that doesn't happen, I don't think, if I had to bet my life, that we're going to be able to put that fence in that area. Not to mention, we've worked extremely hard with our architect to come up with this plan. And I wish we had the next section totally done and we could show you. And then you would realize that that fence in that area north of the garage would not be feasible. And I apologize, we don't have that finished yet.
And anything further?
Yeah, I just the usable space is having that there is just the whole plan layout would be is needed for us. So we appreciate this opportunity again, and that's all we have to say.
And thank you. Now, with that, we'll come back to the board for any action or with lack of action, any questions, further questions can take place at this time from the board to the petitioner staff, please.
Yeah, this is Eric Coyne. I have a question that was kind of alluded to, and I'm sorry I missed her name, the woman that lives directly across the street, across Morton from you. She had mentioned something about security and all that, and you had, I think Dee Dee had addressed it too, all the people coming by. Could you talk a little bit? Are there people like wandering into your yard and things like that? Are you getting I don't know. I don't want to say trespassers necessarily, because I don't know, but are you getting folks wandering into the yard, and are they, how often, if does that occur? Thanks.
Wait a second. Wayne, 1 second. And please.
Go ahead, Dee Dee.
You go ahead.
Well, it's kind of ironic, as you asked that question, Eric. I was at work and my wife sent me a text this morning, and what this is, I don't know if we can see a picture of someone walking through our yard.
That I met face to face at my back door when I was leaving on that deck. He was 10 feet away from me, and I happened to snap the picture. And we've had to call the police at least 3 times. I probably have 50 pictures of people in the space beside us. And at any given moment, we cannot leave the back door unlocked because anybody could walk right in. We had an incident with someone running around the front yard with a hatchet. It's crazy. It feels so unsafe. And that is really why we just wanted that small space where I know that we can go from the garage to the house, pull in, and be safe. And we do not feel that at night at all.
And just so I can understand, on the north and south side, so that those are both fenced in, so that whole area would be, basically you pull into the garage, open the garage door, pull in, shut the garage door, and then you'd be able to walk to the house, and then there would be fence on both the north and south side?
Yes, if the picture was there, you could see a proposed fence is basically from the back corner of the house, the northwest west corner to the garage, and there would be a gate there. So visitors that come would come to that gate and come in. And we could put a lock on it with a number for our kids and company. So when we pull into the garage, we would just have that small area to walk in safely and securely. And then that being said, we wanted that private yard area just for a couple chairs for the grill and not have to worry about someone walking right up there. And again, our architect had recommended, 10 feet is just tight to be able to do that. And so that's why. And also we had Connor Hedrick, when he was the president of the Historic Preservation Commission, he did a tour with us of the house and gave us recommendations specifically with what the staff would recommend, what they would approve, and what they would not. And very clearly, he demonstrated that it needs to be back. You need to do as much as you can here. We asked him at that point if we could do a courtyard up in front of the addition, the future addition, and he said not with any fencing. You'd have to do it with shrubs or boulders or something, because that's where we originally were going to have a private area. And behind the existing tree and the future addition. And he said it would not be approved.
Thank you.
In his opinion.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. And you said you've been there 6 months?
Yes, we purchased it a year ago, October 30th, but we did not move here until May, the end of May, beginning of June.
Okay, thank you.
But Eric, you do generate a question for me that I had not thought of, is what was can you leave that up, Eric or Jackie? That image. So you have the existing gravel area. How do you actually, there's an existing gravel area. Do you come in off of that unimproved alley to park there? Okay, so the question I have is did you examine building the garage so that it faces the unimproved alley and move it to the south so that most of the property behind the house itself could be used all the way back to the setback line? Had that been looked at as an option, and and if it had been looked at as an option, what was the objection to that?
It's too tight of a turn.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, sorry.
The turn into the garage is too tight and you would not be able to do that. And we cannot remove the mudroom.
Cannot remove the mudroom from
Historical. We did get a certificate of appropriateness for the mudroom where we're keeping the same windows. Everything is within their guidelines that we're doing there. And so that's why the only thing that worked was a little connector. And another reason was because it can only be, we had to have it connected, or it was considered an accessory dwelling or accessory building, and that can only be 15% of the total of our house.
So given that then, just for clarification, I'd like to go back to staff then. So should the petitioners instead leave the drawing up?
Eric, can you share the drawing?
So just to be sure, staff's either of you on the staff side, that existing gravel area. So if they were to have built a garage over that existing area and then built between that garage to the house, they wouldn't be able to stay within code then, right? They would go beyond the 15%.
I'm sorry, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, but the size limitation for an accessory structure in this zoning district is 15% of the cumulative square footage of the primary building, or 1,000 square feet, whichever is greater. Isn't that correct?
Right. So they could do up to 1,000.
So they could do an accessory structure. They want it to be attached.
Oh, so they do have the option to actually stay within code and have it detached.
Yes, at
Because
this
they wish
setback
to have
mark.
it attached, which my understanding from the previous answer that Eric, to Eric's question, which is for issues of safety to have kind of a fenced in area between the house and the garage. That was the choice that was being made.
Sure, well, a fence they could do. It's the roof that they that is causing the problem. Because they want this to be attached as one structure, then they need to meet the setback requirements for a primary structure, which is 7 feet.
Okay.
If they wanted it to be 5 feet, then they can do a detached structure of this size and have it be detached. They
No.
just are choosing not to do that.
Okay, I understand.
Okay.
Thank you for that, staff, and thank you, Dee Dee, for your answer. Any other questions or any, at this time too, we can entertain a motion if you so desire.
sorry.
Any
Yeah,
questions?
this is
go
Eric. I
ahead.
have one quick question to what Jackie just said. So basically, they could have this structure where it is as long as it doesn't have like an attached breezeway.
Yes, and
So-
Eric Grulich, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I just double checked the code and I believe that that is accurate.
Yes, correct. If it was not attached, then it would be fine.
Right, so this
So
is, oh, sorry.
Literally,
go-
they could build like 6 inches away from the garage a covered thing that connects it to the back of the house. And as long as it's not attached to the garage, we'd be okay with that.
as
It
long
would
as
meet
there's not a
code,
shared
yes.
roof. Yes,
It would meet code. So really, okay.
Well,
Thank you.
that's, but Eric, that's a great question, because then it comes down to what is making this attached? Is it the little rooms I'm seeing here? It's actually going to be an enclosed like addition to the house that's going right to the garage. So
it's, so she has said, so she, correct
you
me if
use
I'm
the
wrong,
term
please.
breezeway. That's why I'm asking. A
Oh,
breezeway,
right.
you know.
The breezeway is open. The part that looks closed is already there. They're just rehabbing it, I believe. That's the mudroom they've been discussing.
So would it be safe to say that I could legitimately make an argument that that's semantics then? Because it's if they had a 1 inch gap between the top of that breezeway and the garage would be unattached.
Yeah, that's a very fine line that we deal with oftentimes. But basically, as long as they're not physically connected, then it's not attached. What we tell people for an addition is, the roof lines have to be attached and integral to some degree. But yes, if they're physically not touching, it could be looked at as detached completely.
And that would be over the disputed 2 feet, that 1 inch.
Yes.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
If I could make a clarification, sorry.
Please.
So basically, just because we have some new people and just to, sometimes the lines like get blurred or whatever, it is important for the Historic Preservation Commission to sign off. We are happy when petitioners can come forward with petitions where they have buy-in from their neighborhood associations as well. That's always useful. Or if they've, planned things out with an architect and to move forward. But none of those things reflect the findings, the finding that we have found that doesn't meet, which is the third finding, which is asking what is the practical difficulty in meeting code on this property. So in this instance, that would be that you just couldn't have a breezeway. And is that a practical difficulty or just something that they want to do? Additionally, this is a weird zoning district, as Eric mentioned. This is a single family house. So for example, all the properties to the west of this are single family homes. They're zoned R3. If they wanted to have a detached structure of this size, they couldn't because it's big. It's really big for this area. So they would have to attach it in order to be able to have a 2-car garage of this size. And then they would have to meet their setbacks. We have not been able to find anything about this site. Some people say peculiar condition, that any peculiar condition or practical difficulty in being able to use this site as a single family home that can have a garage. This just happens to be the particular design that they would like. And I think a little bit to some of the questions Mr. Throckmorton was asking, could a private yard, could that area be oriented if that space between the existing house and the proposed garage was down to 10 feet instead of 1210, could the private yard design be made to stick out a little bit further north? It doesn't seem like it couldn't. It just seems like that wouldn't be the preference. And for us, when we're looking at findings, we are trying to look at what is and isn't possible. For example, when Ms. Cox-Ash mentioned the first petition tonight, it has a humongous culvert running under it. There's not much the petitioner can do about that that's reasonable. In this case, we feel that there is. So we just want to be clear about, and I think Eric did a good job about saying, the third finding calls for finding practical difficulty, and we just haven't found any. So if you all do think there is some, then we would in this hearing, or we could continue to the next time, have to write a finding that says that, yes, we think this property does have peculiar condition and that there is a practical difficulty in meeting code here, and this is what it is. So for those of you who are new, we would have to flesh that out since we recommended denial.
Okay,
Thanks for letting me clarify.
Okay, and I appreciate the explanation. I do need, however, to address the comment about the earlier petition we heard due to there is no precedence. So I'm not going to address the public comments about that, but something that happens in any prior petitions are not what sets precedence for anything we do on what we're hearing. We hear each one as a unique case. Is that accurate?
Yes,
Jack?
that's completely accurate. I wanted to make that point since it was brought up for those who maybe don't know.
Understood. And unfortunately, for those of us on the board, we have to understand which things are relevant and not relevant to the particular case that's in front of us. And the public certainly has their right to speak as to what disturbs them about what they hear for public hearings, and we appreciate their comments. Now, with that, any other questions? But again, thank you, Jackie, for explaining that, because codes and those types of things are very difficult to understand the nuances of it. So, Eric or Jessica or
I have a comment real quick. One of the letters in the packet is from JT Forbes and Martha Shedd. Martha and I are on the Boys and Girls Club board together. We haven't talked about this. It won't influence my decision, but I just thought I'd let everybody know that.
No, thank you for that clarification. Flav, do you have any questions or comments?
Well, I guess a question about procedure. So
Please.
they recommended denial, and they didn't find any peculiar reasons. Is safety in your own home a peculiar reason? Is that something to think about in that specific location? Of course, not everywhere in Bloomington you would have people, walking in your yard, in the back and in the front, and everywhere. You wouldn't feel unsafe going from your detached garage to your house. Is that a form of peculiarity, I guess?
A peculiar condition.
Correct.
So I can put the staff on the spot, or I could say that I think that's the type of question that we have to ask ourselves as board members, whether we think that that's a valid reason. I will let staff speak to it, but I don't think very seriously that there are conditions laid out as this is a peculiar condition. Is that accurate, staff?
Yeah, so certainly safety can be accomplished in a lot of different ways. We discussed fencing tonight, as a way to secure the rear of the property. So what the board has to decide is allowing the garage to be 2 feet further away from the house, something that allows the property to be used in a reasonable manner that, making it be 2 feet closer would not allow. And it's really hard to argue, that 2 feet is, really causing a hardship with the use of the property. That's the crux of this matter.
Thank you. And I do want to clarify on spacing. It's 12 feet, 10.5 inches. And so we're not talking about reducing it to 10 feet. We're talking about reducing it to just 1.5 inches under 11 feet. So I do want to make sure that we understand that we're talking about a difference between just under 11 and just under 13, not 12 feet and 10 feet. Any other comments or questions from the board, please?
Yeah, this is Eric again. I'm very sympathetic to the security issue, as I think the fact that you've lived there 6 months and had to call the police 3 times is unfortunate. But I think once we clarified the fencing on both sides and that literally you could have the exact same footprint of this garage, and really what we're talking about is the length of a breezeway, I think is what, for me, this is boiled down to. So I think as I consider how I'm going to vote, that the security issue for me is resolved because you have a fence in you're going to be able to pull into your garage and walk securely to the back of the house. So we're really talking about a breezeway, I think, is what it boils down to. And so then the question for me is that breezeway, having an extra 1.5 foot of a breezeway, is that within the UDO, and is that peculiar and something special? And so as I consider my vote, that's for me what I think this is going to turn on. So thank you.
Thank you, Eric. At this point, we're at a point where a motion would be appropriate if such a motion would like to be entertained.
So this is my first motion. So I will probably.
It better be good, Eric.
I will probably get the verbiage wrong, but I move for a vote on case V as in Victor 19-21 from Petitioner Wayne and Danielle Poole, 916 South Morton Street. Request for variance.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll hold here and have you redo it. Are you asking for us to approve the V-1921, or are you asking us to deny the request for variance?
I am making a motion to deny.
So,
okay, so this is where I would just clarify, because our recommendation is denial. A vote yes here would be to deny it.
Okay, so so Eric, your motion, as I heard it, was you move to recommend denial of V-19-21. Is that accurate?
Yes, which is in line with the recommendation from the staff.
From the city. Okay. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, so we do have a motion in front of the board on which we could take action. And if you're ready, again, a yes vote means that the variance will be denied. A no vote means that the variance will be approved. Did I say that correctly, Jackie, in there?
Kind of. A yes vote means that the variance would be denied. A no vote means someone else has to make another motion.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be a negative. Okay. So with that, go ahead and call the roll, please.
Throckmorton,
Yes.
Burrell,
Yes.
Coyne,
Yes.
and Sonborn.
Yes.
4-0. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for bringing the petition. I do think the only comments I would make following that would be that I do think some very slight changes and coming back in front of us, if necessary, might work. But I do think that there's a lot of solutions there that do not require action from the board. And I appreciate you taking the time to meet with us. Any other business before the board at this time? Seeing none, I will call this meeting to a close, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you all.